Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Houston Texans at the Miami Dolphins in their Week 7 matchup played October 25th, 2015. We're going to go over all the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So starting off in the first quarter, just 4 minutes into the game, Ryan Tannehill hits Rashad Matthews for a 53-yard touchdown, and with the extra point by Andrew Franks, it was 7-0 Miami over Houston. Then, with about 7 minutes still left in the first, Tannehill airs it out to hit Jarvis Landry. Landry makes some incredible moves crossing the field, as he must have ran 100 yards on that 50-yard touchdown reception, and it was 14-0 with the extra point by Franks. So then, with still 3 minutes left, Tannehill connects with Jarvis Landry again for the second time in this quarter for a touchdown with a 10-yard touchdown pass. With the extra point by Franks, it was 21-0 Miami over Houston after one quarter of play. But the Dolphins weren't done just yet. Less than a minute into the second quarter, Tannehill hits Lamar Miller, and Miller takes it 54 yards for the touchdown. With the extra point by Franks, it was 28-0 Miami over Houston. Then, just seconds later, about 14 seconds later, Rashad Jones intercepts Hoyer and runs it back 23 yards for the pick six. And with the extra point by Franks, it was 35-0 Miami over Houston. And then, with less than 3 minutes left before halftime, Lamar Miller runs it 85 yards for the touchdown, and it was 41-0 after they did not get they didn't go for the extra point, but 41-0 at halftime, 41 straight points for the Dolphins. And at this point, you had to figure the Dolphins had this one pretty well in hand. And going into the game, they were 0-7 against Houston. They had never beaten the Texans in their franchise history. Of course, the Texans being an expansion team, but the Dolphins had never beat them. But here, they were up 41-0 at halftime. And in the first quarter, you actually saw it looked like a monsoon had hit with it when it started raining, and that's how it must have felt for the Texans there in Miami, as they were getting the points rained down on them in this one in the first half. But then in the third quarter, with about 8 minutes still left in the third, Hoyer hit Arian Foster for a 7-yard touchdown pass, and it was now 41-6. Miami still in the lead by 35. Foster would score on a 2-yard touchdown run with less than 2 minutes left in the third, and the extra point by Novak made it 41-13. as they still trailed by 28 points. So now in the fourth quarter, Nate Washington would get a touchdown, a 27-yard reception from Hoyer. Novak added the extra point, and it was 41-20. So it's now a 21-point game, as Houston had scored 20 straight after allowing 41 straight. And then, with a little less than 8 minutes left, Franks hit a 53-yard field goal to make it 44-20 as the Dolphins extended their lead to 24. And then, with 4 minutes left, Hoyer hit Nate Washington for a 5-yard touchdown pass. They went for 2 but did not convert. And so the final score would end up 44-26 as the Dolphins win, and they even up their record at 3-3. They're undefeated since Dan Campbell took over the coaching responsibilities since they got rid of Philbin. They've turned it around in 2015 now. They're 1-2 at home as they win their first game in Miami this season in a blowout and a rout of the Texans. The Texans now 2-5 on the season. They're 1-3 on the road. And what a crazy game this was, especially early on in the first half. They had 4 touchdown plays of 50-plus yards in the first half, which, according to the stats, that's the first time that's happened in 75 years. Not since back when they were wearing, leather helmets as anything even comparable to that happened, as the Dolphins just were hitting home runs in this game. I mean, it was incredible. And not to mention Tannehill making history as he started this game off 18 for 18, and he finished last week's game with 7 straight completions, which gave him 25 consecutive completions for Ryan Tannehill as he breaks Donovan McNabb's old record of 24 consecutive completions. So Tannehill now has the record for the most consecutive completions in NFL history. He also tied Alex Smith's record for the highest completion percentage, as he had only 1 incomplete pass in the game, as he was 18 for 19 in this game. And that's, of course, the highest completion percentage with at least 14 passes thrown, as he had over 94% completion. 18 for 19, 282 yards and 4 touchdowns for Tannehill. He also had 3 yards off of 1 rush, but no interceptions for Tannehill. And what a huge day for Tannehill and the Dolphins. Not to mention what a monstrous day for Lamar Miller. 14 carries, 175 yards, including that 85-yard touchdown. And that was on the ground, not to mention the 3 receptions for 61 yards, including that 54-yard touchdown, as he had 2 touchdowns on the day and a total of 236 total yards for Lamar Miller in this game. And then Jarvis Landry with the 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions for 83 yards. And for the Texans, Hoyer, 23 for 49, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Of course, all that came in the second half when they were already down by 41 points. It was garbage time. Arian Foster had 18 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. He also had 5 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown in this game as well, as he ended up with 125 yards on the day. And Foster actually would end up leaving the game late in the game as he got an injury. He wasn't even touched on the play. He was just moving in motion, and then he ended up going down. So it remains to be seen what's the status of his health. Nate Washington had 9 receptions for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns to be the leading receiver in this game. And as I said, Landry with the 83 yards off of 5 catches for the Dolphins for 2 touchdowns. Matthews with 3 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. And then we look at the kickers. Franks 1 for 1 on the field goal, 5 for 6 on the extra points. And for the Texans, Novak 2 for 3 on the extra points, did not attempt a field goal. We look at the defense. Jones had that pick 6 for the Dolphins. And Jenkins with a forced fumble. And Ndamukong Suh had 2 sacks in this game. Cameron Wake had 2 sacks as well, as he picked up right where he left off last week, as he's had 5.5 sacks in the last 2 games. He also had 2 forced fumbles for Cameron Wake. Crick had a forced fumble for the Texans. Simon had a sack. J.J. Watt had 2 sacks in this game, and Jadeveon Clowney got his first sack of his career. It's kind of hard to believe he's finally got a sack. You would have thought he would have already had one, but due to the injuries and everything, he finally picks up his first sack here in this game, which they got just totally demolished in this one. We look at the stats, team stats: 24 first downs for the Texans, 21 first downs for the Dolphins. On third down, it was 6 for 15 for Houston, 40% converted. They went for it once on fourth down. They did not convert. And for the Dolphins, just 1 of 9 on third downs. And, 9 times out of 10, when you only have 1 third down conversion, you're not going to win. Well, this is that 1 out of 10 times where you do. And how do you do that? Well, you do that with 4 50-plus yard touchdowns. So you don't really need to convert on third downs when you're scoring, like 54-yard touchdowns, 85-yard touchdowns, and all the like. When we look at net yards in the game, 503 net yards for the Dolphins in this game. 322 net yards for the Texans. On the ground, the Dolphins netted 248 yards. The Texans 71 yards. And through the air, the Dolphins netted 255. Tannehill sacked 4 times for a total loss of 41 yards. And the Texans netted 251 through the air, as Hoyer was sacked 4 times for a total of 23 yards lost. When we look at the penalties, 8 penalties against the Dolphins for 52 yards. Just 3 penalties against the Texans for 25 yards. The Texans did fumble the ball 3 times, but they did not lose it. They recovered it each time. The Dolphins did have 1 fumble, which they did lose. And then we look at the red zone. 3 for 4 for the Texans, 75% in the red zone. Just 1 for 2 for the Dolphins, 50%. And we look at the time of possession. 32 minutes and 5 seconds for Miami. 27 minutes and 55 seconds for Houston. So the Dolphins just getting those big plays early on, dominating on both sides of the ball, and it just, once it got going, they just didn't stop. The route was on, and this is something in the past we've seen Miami do this, even in the previous years too. Is down there in Miami, there's times when they just get going and they seem unstoppable, especially with the way their defense is, with that pass rush. And with that ball hawk in secondary, and Tannehill airing it out. And of course, Jarvis Landry made some incredible moves on that 50-yard touchdown pass. That's one I would definitely recommend you go check out. I'd always feel that the best way to check out highlights, video highlights, is just go to NFL.com. They've got quite a bit of video highlights that you can check out there. Or even just go to the NFL Network. Those are always where I go, because that's, go right to the horse's mouth, I always say. If you want to see the video, that's the best place to find it, is either NFL Network or NFL.com. But as for this one, Miami looking strong. Dan Campbell's got them playing right. They weren't looking too disciplined until they got rid of Philbin, but now with Campbell, you see that it's like they've got a whole new energy. They're motivated. They're playing up to the caliber of their talent. They're reaching their full potential, because they've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball on this team, and they've gotten a lot more physical, and they're actually, buying into what Campbell is coaching, what he's saying. They're buying into it, full steam ahead, and the Dolphins are looking to make a run and a push for a possible wild card. They are, of course, 3 games back of first place, 1 game back of second place, with the Jets losing to the Patriots. They're right there in the thick of things in the AFC East, which is arguably the toughest division in all of football. And the Texans continue to disappoint, is even, they got some stuff going in the second half, but at that point it was really, the whole second half was garbage time. And then Foster goes down in the 4th, although he did have the 2 touchdowns in the 3rd, but then now it looks like they might be losing Foster again. And that's not a good sign for the Texans for sure.